While retirement is generally seen as a time of relaxation and self-focus, God calls us to love, serve, and help others for a lifetime. He has been preparing us for this retirement season literally our entire lives. In retirement, countless Christians enter a state of spiritual dormancy, not knowing how they are called to have an impact for God's kingdom. The Retirement Reformation seeks to encourage and empower the 50 million Christians approaching or in retirement to embrace the calling God has been preparing in them. When the world says it's time to stop, you can begin to have your greatest impact. Welcome to I Retire for Him, the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation, where our goal is to journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him.
Did you know that when you retire, your calling doesn't retire? Your calling is a lifetime calling. And if you're still around, God is not done with you yet. I know you're fully aware of what you retired from, but what did you retire to? You've tuned in to I Retire for Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation, an organization dedicated to you, the retiree who loves Jesus and wants purpose for all of your days, especially the ones ahead of you. Bruce Bruinswood joins us today. And as the founder of the Retirement Reformation, he's here to encourage and walk through retirement with you in the form of podcasts and all of the incredible resources on our website, retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook, Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg. The last 2 weeks, we've been focusing on the Retirement Reformation Manifesto. Just click on the resource tab on the Retirement Reformation website and click on Manifesto. In there, you'll find 10 principles that lay out what we think would be the absolute fullest you can experience retirement, the way God designed it to be. And the last 2 weeks, the last two podcasts, we've talked through principles 1 through 6. And this week, we're going to finish up with 7 through 10. All of these principles are designed to spur a reformation in the way you look at retirement. It's a manifesto because things need to change. Bruce Bruinswood was here to lead us along the way. Bruce, it's been a long time coming. We're on show 102. We've talked about the manifesto on and off over these last 100 shows, but this is really the core of everything we talk about, isn't it, Bruce? Because we need to reform the way we think.
Well, if our audience would just kind of think, if they're going to go to a new town and you want to do a little research to understand it, you need a really good roadmap. You need a map and you need to study it and be able to see where are the main pathways, where are the main crossroads, where do things come together, where do they start to go out, and what is on the exterior. And so the Retirement Reformation Manifesto is like that. I think of it in a similar fashion to perhaps the 10 Commandments that came in the Old Testament, but it gives us a pattern of life. It says, how do we check to see how we're doing? Or how do we get a new inspiration to where we need to go or changes we need to make? And the manifesto and its 10 principles give us that, and give us that in a very refreshing and contemporary way.
It's inspiring, and the manifesto has so much meat in it. And again, we encourage you to go out to retirementreformation.org/manifesto to read it, to print it, to sign it, to indelibly write it on your soul. In the last couple of podcasts, we talked about the principles of freedom, preparation, contentment, the principles of stewardship, of love, and community. Today, we start with principle number 7, which is, I'll wait for it, which is fabulously unbelievable. Here it is. It's intentionality, because you have to be intentional with what you're doing in order to know what you're doing. And I got lost in my notes, which is why I had to delay there. So intentionality gets you lost every time. But intentionality really places you on the pathway to enjoying retirement. Here's what intentionality says is principle number 7 of the Retirement Reformation. We recognize that our calling ends at death, not retirement. Our entire lives are designed for a purpose. We can continue to grow spiritually and emotionally throughout our retirement. This allows God to redeem our past mistakes, revitalize broken relationships, strengthen our commitment to our unique calling. We will follow his purpose, bear fruit, and experience the joy of being a disciple of Jesus. This is all about allowing God to give us a fresh restart, Bruce. In your mind, what does it look like to live out our lives in retirement with intentionality, Bruce?
You know, what is the opposite of intentionality is just simply reacting to what happens. And so that we're not thinking about it. We're just using primarily our emotions to be able to experience our life and to respond to changes. Every morning, say just before 5 o'clock, my dumb alarm goes off. And I have to think to myself, part of me says, gee, I'd really like to go back to sleep. And the other part of me says, I doggone well better put my feet on the floor, get my tail out of bed, and go work out. Because it is only because I am intentional about that. If I just left it just to my own, what would I rather do? I'd rather flop that pillow over, turn over, and go back to sleep for another hour. But I do know that in order to be able to carry out God's purposes, I need to be in, better shape. And so in order to do that, I need to work out and I need to be intentional about it.
When we find ourselves living with intentionality our retirement years, how does that differ than what the American dream of retirement says we should be doing?
Well, in the American dream, there is no intentionality other than to do things that satisfy yourself. It is a life that is motivated by Oreo cookies. It is and it is experienced by that next can of Coke and the thrill of seeing the next waterfall or the next view when I'm traveling. Those are all the things that provide the motivation. And it is true that we will go downhill physically and we will go downhill mentally. That's the truth. It's called I can't remember the word.
Aging?
No.
Okay.
Senescence is the word. Senescence means it's the natural state of growing older that everybody goes through. That's one thing that we all experience. And that's just simply true. But now, are there things that can offset that natural experience? Then there are the unexpected experiences of a sickness or other activities that come into our lives and how we respond to them. But in that area of senescence, as we're going downhill, we can also grow. And that's why the intentionality is so important, because it says here we can grow spiritually and we can grow emotionally. And if I were to rewrite this, I would add one more word to it, Jim. That would be relationally. That we have the opportunity to grow spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. And when we do that, and you combine that with the other 9 elements that we lay out here, it makes for a totally changed life and something that you can things that you can look forward to rather than hiding from or being depressed about.
Intentionality seems like a very important point when it comes to retirement, because in order to reform your retirement, it's going to take a whole lot of intentionality in order to accomplish all of the things that are on the manifesto. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Jon Hirst. He's got a story to tell us and share with us how God is using him. And then when we finish up this series on the Retirement Reformation Manifesto, we get to principle number 8, which is focus, talk about principle number 9, which is service, and principle number 10, which is advocacy. Stay tuned. You're listening to I Retire For Him. We'll be right back.
Recreating Retirement is an interactive small group study helping you to move from nothing to what's next. You can join us on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. East Coast time on Facebook Live. Our goal for this study is to provide a group setting for interaction and new ideas while leading you through a first step in your journey from retirement to reformation. Here's the big idea. During the next 5 years, 5,000 small groups will experience this journey of discovery in churches and faith-based organizations across the country. Is your church a place where recreating retirement needs to be planted? Join us online to experience the study or prepare to lead a small group at your church or ministry. Email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org or go to our website at retirementreformation.org. That's retirementreformation.org.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire For Him. As we do in every second segment of every show, we always bring in a special guest of somebody that's living out their faith, either running up to retirement or in retirement. Bruce, who do you have for us today?
Well, for our audience today, I want to introduce you to a very special friend. So when I think of the Retirement Reformation, before it was the Retirement Reformation, Jon Hirst played just a really special role for me and for what has happened since then. So Jon is not anywhere near retirement. And if he were, he wouldn't be retiring anyway. And so God has just used him in some really special ways. But in the life of the retirement and the Retirement Reformation and in the bringing together of a group of people and the development of the Retirement Manifesto, it was many of his ideas, his insights, and his thoughts that were really influential. So, Jon, I just wanted to introduce you to our audience, and maybe you could reflect just a little bit on some of those early days, not that many years ago, where we were saying, I wonder if there's a need.
Bruce, it's great to be with you today. And yeah, it was so much fun to be part of the groundswell of work on the Retirement Reformation, getting that going. I run a company called Generous Mind that helps people be generous with their ideas. And Bruce, your idea was one that I was so passionate about helping you be generous with, because I saw it as so important. And I love the fact that you wanted to put together a manifesto, because I think so many times people have a cause they're passionate about. They don't have a way to rally people to the cause. They don't have a simple way to say, hey, if you think these things are important, you should hang out with me. You should be part of this. You should join me in this. And I think that's what the Retirement Reformation's Manifesto really does. It says, these are important things. And if you think they're important too, then we should spend time together. And I think, Bruce, you've done a great job of kind of being that champion that calls out on those things.
Well, Jon, I think when we were having our first conversations over lunch and over coffee and thinking about some of these areas, I never would have guessed at that point, because I hadn't done the research, that there are 48 million Christ followers. That is our marketplace. And if you had asked me way back then, I would have thought, well, maybe 5,000-6,000 or something like that. But 48 million. And so the way that God is calling us to be able to influence that 48 million is what the Retirement Reformation is all about. So Jon, just kind of share with the audience what he's been doing in your life over the last couple of years in terms of ministry, because I find it very encouraging, and I think it'll be encouraging to our audience. So open the door and give us a little insight to some of the things that he's got you doing in that generous area.
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing that God has been showing me is that there's this difference between being and doing. I think in our career, it's so much about doing stuff, right? You get the next job, the next promotion. But God first calls us to be, right? We're human beings, not human doing. So he calls us to be first, and then to do out of the richness of that being. And the work that I've done, I run this think tank called Generous Mind, where we help people be generous with their ideas. I also work for a ministry called SIL International as their chief innovation officer. And in both of those jobs, I've been wrestling with, I'll talk about for a minute, the topic of artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence has a lot to do with who we are as humans, because the fact that machines can do more means we have to reflect on what humans should be doing, right? What is it that is genuinely human things that God created us to do, that he wants us to be involved in? And then how do we use tools like artificial intelligence to help be more effective, be more fruitful, to do the things that he's asked us to do? But as I've been wrestling with that, it kind of takes me back to the manifesto. Bruce, I was recently just looking through the manifesto again, and I was realizing how well it mixes being and doing.
That's right.
Because it talks about things like community, being in community, right? That being with one another, understanding that need for connection, which, as you've talked with me so many times about all the loneliness we see in retirement. Talks about love and what it means to love others. But then it also talks about stewardship. What does it mean to steward, right? And as I think about my roles, either with Generous Mind or with SIL right now, I think about this balance of being and doing. How do we get this right in a very, very busy world where we have what I call the attention economy, right? The most valuable thing we have is our attention, and where are we placing that attention? And the reason most people don't realize that retirement's even coming is because they're not paying any attention, right? They're just moving from thing to thing to thing. And before you know it, they're retired. And they're like, well, now what do I do? Right? And so in my role, I think being in the innovation space, being in the space of helping people be generous with their ideas, I realize the more you're focused on new things and different things and change, the more this balance of being and doing is just so critical.
Well, that's a really, really wonderful distinction. As a matter of fact, in some of the reading and praying and thinking that I've been about that very subject, is that, during our working years, it really is pretty much all about doing. It's how long is my checklist and how many checks did I make today? And if I only did 5 checks today, well, that wasn't a very good day. But if I did 8 checks, oh, that was really good. Well, you can't use that model when you're 82, because you'll have, like 2 checks and you'll just get depressed. So what is the model that God has for us? And I think you talked about it or mentioned it, is that we are called to be fruitful. And fruitful has to do with impact. And impact then has, then if I can have one great conversation a day with someone and I can impact their lives, wow, that's valuable. So does that distinction make any sense to you?
Yeah, I think about the balance of faithfulness and fruitfulness, right?
Oh, good.
And this balance where God's asking us to remain faithful, but also to be fruitful. But those don't always come in the same measure, right? Many times when you're younger, you're seeing a lot more fruit because you're more active, you're in the middle of your career. Later on in your life, it may not look as fruitful, but that faithful longevity actually makes the fewer things that you're doing even more impactful. I remember hearing recently about someone sharing that the most significant relationships that they hear about are relationships of grandkids and grandparents. That's where some of the most significant aha moments happen in a person's life. And I think about that, just the impact that a grandparent has on those grandchildren. Even when a parent can't get through or doesn't seem to be connecting, sometimes a grandparent can get through in a way that just is obviously supernatural, right? God's doing something there. And so to kind of tie it into what you just said, I think I've definitely seen that. And I'm in this place where I'm in the in between. I've got almost grown kids, and I'm engaging with my parents, and I'm watching my parents interacting with my kids, and there's kind of this triangle of interactions between 3 generations, and I'm so thankful for that. And I think that so many times nowadays those relationships are broken. Like, Bruce, you and I have talked a lot about intergenerational, the power of intergenerational dynamics that so many times just don't exist in our culture today.
They do not, as in the one of the institutions that seems to encourage the lack of intergenerational is the church, because everybody's siloed into different age groups. And so as we introduce an intergenerational prayer ministry this fall and look for other ways that we can be in community, that we can build relationships, that we can grow in our spiritual maturity, that we can grow in our emotional maturity, and we can grow in our relational capacity. And those are things that we can do whether we're 55, 35, or 95. Mm-hmm. And we're in 95, we just had a longer opportunity to do that, but it's never too late to even start. So that's so good. So Jon, in reflecting back on the Retirement Reformation Manifesto if there is a single really cogent thought that comes to you out of that would be of help to our audience, what would that be?
As I've thought about the manifesto recently and preparing for this time today to talk with you, Bruce, and with you, Jim, I think the thing that jumps out at me is the contrasts. I think, in life, I was just reading an author by the name of Parker Palmer is talking about what look like conflicts are sometimes two sides of an issue that God is working with us to wrestle through. And so I think about, for instance, two of the different manifesto items like freedom and stewardship. And when you think about them in isolation, you go, oh yeah, I have freedom, and in Christ I have freedom. And oh yeah, I'm responsible for these things. But when you put them together, you realize that I have freedom, but freedom to do what, right? To be a steward. And things that sometimes would feel like, oh, stewardship is restricting me and limiting and focusing, and freedom is opening things up. But really, in Christ, they come together. And I think one of the things that I guess that's the thing that jumps out at me the most is that as we look at some of these items, I would encourage everyone listening today to go back and read the manifesto and think about how some of these items might kind of contrast in my heart. It might even, I feel like they kind of pit against each other. And maybe what's God doing in that pinch of saying these things are actually not all that different or not all that opposed to each other. They're just pushing me to grow in some ways that maybe I haven't been willing to grow in the past or haven't been ready to hear yet. And so that's, I think, the thing that jumps out at me, how these things kind of push against each other, but push against each other to create growth and to create maturity in us as Jesus followers.
Thank you for that, and thank you for what you have done, what you are doing, and what God will have you do.
Thanks for being with us, John. You're listening to I Retire for Him. We'll be right back.
Our work on this earth doesn't end when the paycheck stops. God calls us to be faithful for a lifetime. Whether you're looking forward to retirement or you're already there, our all-small group study, Recreating Retirement, will help you understand, engage, and activate what God has for you in this fourth quarter of life. Join Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Bruinsma as you consider your past, strengths, spiritual gifts, and your passions, and how they all come together as the call God has for you in these years. Connect with us on our online community group at facebook.com/Retirement Reformation, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, or if you'd like to bring Recreating Retirement to your church, email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org. Are you ready to start your life-changing journey today?
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him. As we're talking about our Retirement Reformation Manifesto, please go out to retirementreformation.org/manifesto. Print out a copy for yourself, read it, sign it, put it in a plaque, put it on your refrigerator, put it in a plaque and on your refrigerator, but indelibly place this in your hearts. We know what your desire is. You want the most out of retirement. This is how you're going to get it. The Retirement Reformation Manifesto will deliver on all of its promises. Principle 8, Bruce, is called focus. It says here, we intentionally focus our activity.
Before you read that,
go ahead.
Just enter the reason why intentionality is followed by focus, because it is then the focus is what it is that you are being intentional about. So intentionality, I can be an intentionally good golfer, but now what is it that I should be focusing on? So please share with our audience then what focus then entails.
Okay, we intentionally focus our activities on kingdom building activities. Not every activity is beneficial, especially those that are only self-indulgent. Our priority is those activities growing God's kingdom. Those activities will lead to the expansion of His church. We need Jesus and His Holy Spirit to commission and guide our activities. That focus, Bruce, is focusing on kingdom activities the only thing I get to do when I retire? If I'm going to be a good Christian retiree?
No, we can focus on prayer for the Denver Broncos. And
you want to have prayers that actually make a difference. So, Bruce, 7-time, Super Bowl losers, I don't think is really something we need to focus on today's show.
I do think that just about everything that we do has a God perspective to it. It could be just going out and saying hi to our neighbor. We want to say hi to our neighbor and be a representative of Jesus while we're doing that, not with intensity and the focus of creating conflict or creating tension in our lives or in our relationships, but in fact to be able to focus on the things that in fact will help build the kingdom. And that we can find that in almost every activity that we do, even within our leisure activities.
It's incredible because the more we focus on building the kingdom, the more satisfying our activities will be. It's a game changer. Absolutely. Principle number 9 is service. We live on mission for Jesus, representing him to others. God calls each of us to be on mission during every stage of life. An important role for those in retirement is to pass on wisdom learned and to encourage the next generation with that wisdom. Coaching, mentoring, volunteering, grandparenting are valuable opportunities available to us. Bruce, how is service a key to a long, fulfilling life? I know we could ask Mother Teresa if she was still around, but can I serve even if I can't leave my house? Maybe I'm far enough along in retirement where I can't leave my house anymore. Can I still serve? Is there a way to do this?
The intentionality that we need to follow Jesus, the service that he encourages us to perform, the thing they encourage us to focus on, and then the action step is the service. So if you read these in order, you'll understand the process. So many of our listeners and people that I run into, their big question is, well, I realize I ought to be doing something, but I don't know what to do. What's next? And so it is in this service area that we explore the answer to what's next, to what intentionally and with focus that you step into to be guided by how, in fact, it is that you're to help build the kingdom. So service is the action step.
And it's in that action that it actually also participates in some of the revitalization, doesn't it, Bruce? Because when we are serving others, it is a revitalization of our soul, isn't it?
It is so much. As a matter of fact, we're introducing a wraparound grandparenting ministry opportunity here shortly. And I would urge our listeners to be aware for that and check our website. And we're calling it a legacy of love because as seniors, we're not able to be a foster parent, for example, perhaps, but we can help with caring for our grandchildren. We can help caring for foster parents and giving them some relief. And so all these areas of service help fill that hole in our soul that in fact we are doing something that in fact is meaningful to others, purposeful, and in fact gives us great joy.
Principle number 10, as we finish up the Retirement Reformation Manifesto, is advocacy. We resolve to encourage others to find meaning and purpose following God's design. Our conviction leads us to shine God's light on each of our paths, pointing to lives filled with meaning and purpose. Our passion and convictions lead us to encourage all to live lives filled with meaning and purpose. Each of us, including all pastors, ministry leaders, and Jesus followers, are called to this retirement reformation. A new opportunity exists to change the world for Jesus, bear fruit in his name, and experience the abundant life in him. Bruce, who and what are we advocating for as we move toward reforming our ideas of retirement?
You know, I love that last sentence there the most. A new opportunity exists. So a new opportunity. This is something different than what the world is telling us. A new opportunity exists to change the world for Jesus, to bear fruit in his name, and experience the abundant life in him. And while we are doing that, we are impacting others' lives. And so we've got, 350 million people that the 48 million need to impact. And so here we have that opportunity to be an advocate by how we live, what we do, and how we do it.
Bruce, I want to read how you close out the manifesto and have you share some final thoughts with people. So we recognize that it is the power of Jesus that allows us to live with faith and experience fulfillment in every season of life. With that conviction, we embrace John 15:16 as our foundation. You did not choose me, but I chose you and called you so that you might bear fruit that will last. And whatever you ask in my Father's name, he will give it to you. Bruce, final words on the manifesto.
John 15:16 is our key verse, and it is so packed with power and with encouragement and with opportunity, because the knowledge that we have been chosen, phew, man, that is so encouraging. We have been chosen by the omnipotent God of all who created everything. Not only have we been chosen, but then he has some goals for us and prepares us to bear that fruit so that we know that we're not in it alone. We're not just scrambling around. We're not just reacting, but in fact that he has prepared us by our whole lives to be able to act with wisdom and to reflect Jesus to all that we come in contact with. And so it is the power of Jesus. And so if we had to sum up the Retirement Manifesto in one quick phrase, it would be representing what the power of Jesus means in our lives. And when we follow and absorb and then intentionally act with that power, we will be different people. And we won't be grumpy old people, but we'll be people that are, in fact, have some meaning and purpose and have wisdom to commit and to transmit to those that are coming behind us, and perhaps in some occasions to those that are ahead of us, but are also lost.
So many people looking for purpose, so many people looking for, how do I do this? Because it's so unfulfilling. The Retirement Reformation can spell it all out for you in the manifesto. retirementreformation.org/manifesto. Get a copy today. You can just Google Retirement Reformation Manifesto and it will come up as well. It will, this is going to change your life. Bruce, great conversation. Thank you so much for spending so much time putting this manifesto together, because it really lays out a game plan for changing the tone, the tenor of retirement in America and around the world. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate this. And for all of our listeners, we would ask you to share the manifesto with someone else to bring them the joy that is available to you by following its principles.
You've been listening to I Retire for Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, Bruce Bryans has been here, the founder of the Retirement Reformation. We're Christ followers journeying from retirement to reformation, so we can ultimately say, I retire for Him.
I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and Retirement Reformation founder, Bruce Brynsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the Manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.